Hello and welcome to this special session on writing a critically reflective essay. I'm Tess Boyle and I'm the Unit Assessor of EDU 10128, Introduction to Teaching. This is the second task in the unit and the length is 2,500 words, and it's an important task because it constitutes 50% of your grade. And as you would know, you're required to use APA referencing. This task builds on task 1, so use the feedback you were provided in the first task to either to continue to develop the essay around the thesis you developed and the arguments you presented in the first task by adding arguments from Module 2, or completely revise the thesis and the arguments that you originally presented to strengthen your final essay. It's completely up to you which approach you take, but please consider carefully the comments you received in your first task and the contents of this presentation. Preparing to write an essay. There are 5 important phases that you need to go through, and they all take a considerable amount of time. So leaving your writing of your essay to the last minute is not a great idea. Today I'm going to walk you through some of the components of this cycle, particularly those in relation to the kinds of questions I've been receiving in emails and in conversations with students. Step 1, obviously you need to understand the task. And I can see that the quote that I included has thrown a few of you in that you don't understand how it links to the question, so I hope to address that for you now. Step 2, you need to brainstorm, think about the question and the position that you've taken, do some research, come back and brainstorm again. Then you need to plan your essay. You can't sit and write an essay without having an essay plan. You might find that there's gaps in your plan and you need to go on and research a little further. Now, only then, once you've done all of this work, should you start to draft and write your paper. Once you've done your first draft, again, you'll see gaps and you may need to go back and fill those gaps by doing some more research, either by using the unit materials provided online or by reading further into the suggested resources. Then you come back and write again and refine your essay. It's really important that in step 5 you take the time to edit and proofread and edit again. There are usually a lot of errors in your paper after you've been sitting with it for so long. It sometimes takes someone else to look at it for you to pick up those errors, and sometimes it's a matter of you putting it away for 24 hours and not reading it so that you can see those errors jumping off the page. So step 1, these are the areas that I'm going to spend the most time, the areas that people have asked questions about. The first thing you should do is analyse the question. Now, for me, the process of analysing a question is usually one of going in and finding what I see as the key terms. So this is a quote from Stephen Kemmis, who says, "Educational practice is a form of power, a dynamic force both for social continuity and for social change, which, though shared with and constrained by others, rests largely in the hands of teachers." So what does that quote mean in relation to this unit? On the first page of your unit information guide, you'll see that there's an overview of what the unit sets out to achieve. Basically, it introduces you to key ideas associated with being a professional in education and care in the 21st century. In the unit, we introduce you to knowledge, skills and attitudes that you'll be required to demonstrate throughout your degree and in your future career. There's a particular emphasis in the unit on critical reflective practice as the cornerstone of quality teaching and learning. So let's look again at some of those key words in that quote and some of the key words in the unit overview. So, knowledge, skills and attitudes. If teachers are a form of, or educational practice is a form of power, and that power rests largely in the hands of teachers, What does that mean for you in terms of being a professional? What sort of knowledge, skills, and attitudes might you need to have to be able to manage that power in an ethical, equitable, and responsible way? Not so much through your career, but through your degree, but certainly through your career. And how does your management of power and your management of distributing that power, as whether you're going to be someone who thinks of power over, in the role of the teacher is for someone to has power over students and families in the community, or does the current understanding of quality teaching and learning have another understanding around power with empowering others to be fully functioning members of the community, to live a life that's worth living in whatever capacity that they have to do that. So these are the sorts of things. In the 2 modules, we've set out 10 topics, and I would be asking questions like this. So what knowledge, skills, and attitudes have we been talking about in the unit? So there's been a lot, and there's no way you can cover all of these in your essay. But you might be asking questions like, what does it mean to be a teacher in the 21st century? How and can do teachers influence continuity, change, and life chances? What assumptions, beliefs about being a teacher have been supported or changed throughout the unit? Has there been something that's been a real aha moment for you? Or oh wow, I hadn't really thought about that before. Because if you have had one of those moments, that's probably a really good place to think about writing about, if you haven't already constructed a thesis that you're happy with. So what do you know now that you didn't know before? How are stakeholders positioned within the 21st century education and care systems? So there's a lot written about equity and inclusivity, but in your lived experience of education and care, is that what you actually see happening out there? So what you're doing when you're asking these questions is engaging in some critical reflection. We're not telling you that these are the things, this unit is not designed to tell you, here is a bunch of things that you need to know, do, and be. It's really saying, here's the backdrop of which you're going to enter into a profession. Some of it is, going along pretty well, but some of it's got some pretty rough edges, and this is a very topical time at looking at what some of those rough edges might be, and for you to critically reflect on just a component of these things. So once you've analysed the question, you need to develop a thesis statement. Now, much like the glasses in this image, until you develop your thesis statement, everything's going to be blurry and foggy, and it's way too vast a landscape for you to focus in on any particular point. So your thesis is the lens through which you filter the unit content. When you have a succinct and defensible thesis, you can use it to draw evidence from the unit resources and wider reading and research to support or critique your standpoint. There's a fantastic site there that I've put a link that will help you develop your thesis, but I just need you to know that it is not about you writing a summary of everything that you've heard, said, read, or questioned in this unit. It's about developing your thesis and then filtering all of that content through that thesis. So what do I mean? Some ideas, or I guess for some thesis starters, might be teachers in the 21st century have the power to what? Quality teachers are. Curriculum drives continuity and change. Pedagogy is more than. Relationships are integral too. So again, once you've got your thesis statement, go to this website and check if it's succinct and defensible. Now, they are just starters. They're not thesis statements. Okay, there's a lot on this slide, and I'm sorry about that. Start with the unit. Once you've got your thesis statement, you need to start researching and developing arguments that support and critique that statement. So start with the unit materials and work through the topics in modules 1 and 2 to develop a mind map of key ideas about the thesis. Now, I've taken a fairly tongue-in-cheek approach here just to demonstrate how this might happen. So the thesis statement I've got in the centre of that mind map is teachers are responsible for students' NAPLAN. Oh, no, it's meant to be NAPLAN results. So the first topic is about quality. What do quality teachers look like? I might draw from that quality teachers get good results. The second topic talks about or introduces us to curriculum, and I've literally taken the concept there that curriculum is a race, only the best will win, the ultimate prize of a good ATAR and a job. So you can see, I'm not going to read each of those, but you can see as I've worked through those topics, I've drawn out of them, quite contentiously and tongue-in-cheek, I've drawn out of those topics statements or arguments that would support my thesis. So let's look at the being inclusive. Students unlikely to do well on the test that day, you should stay at home. So that's the antithesis of inclusivity, but it is a sentiment that's out there in society, and it is about inclusion and exclusion. So you can see how these points might combine to draw together a series of arguments that emanate and flow back to the thesis. So I've drawn from, they emanate from the unit content, they draw back into that thesis statement. Now, this is what you need to do, and what all of the papers that I read, there were summaries of the content, but not all of the papers that I read, but the papers that I read that needed some further work, there were summaries of the content, but what was missing was that thesis in the centre that everything needed to draw from and back to. So all of your arguments emanate from and flow back to your thesis statement. It is not a summary of the unit content. Now don't forget, you can pause and look at how those arguments might have been drawn from the content. Once you've got a series of arguments, and really just, that's just a starting point, you need to brainstorm the ideas. So brainstorming, as you know, is a brain dump about everything you can think of and read about and go back to support your opinion or belief. Will you use it all? No. Does it help to organise your paper? Yes, it does. You'll end up with more than you need, and that's okay. Step 3, once you've got those arguments and that mind map or brainstorm, you need to map out or plan the structure of your essay. Now again, I think this is an area where it really separates the sheep from the lambs, if you like, in terms of someone who's going to get a pass or a credit and someone who's going to get a distinction and a high distinction. You can tell immediately if a paper's been well planned and structured. So here's a bit of an image around how you might do that. So the introduction, what's your stance, what's your argument? It should be no more than 10% of the word limit, so 250 words. Then you can separate your essay out into 3 or probably 4 body sections that really support a strong argument. You can have 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs that contribute to that argument, and then you move on. So once you finish that, you brainstorm, organise your structure. Each body section should be supporting your opinion, and the number of paragraphs will vary depending on how long the assignment is. This is a critical reflective essay, so it requires not only supporting arguments but also a critique of your argument. So my argument about teachers are responsible for NAPLAN results is not very difficult to find. There will be lots of evidence that says it's not the teacher's responsibility, and there will be plenty of arguments that say it is. So that's both sides of the story really need to be presented. You really do need a paragraph structure, and you need to follow something like Peel or the 6-sentence structure that you've been introduced to in language and literacy, whatever works for you. But one sentence is not a paragraph, and you must have 1 point per paragraph, not a collection of ideas. One argument, clearly articulated through your topic sentence, explained, elaborated, and with some supporting evidence, and then there needs to be a link either to the next topic or back to your thesis. So here's a model from the academic skills unit. Again, there's a lot in there, and I'm not going to take you through it holistically. You can see that we start broadly, we narrow down into our main arguments, and then we funnel out again to the broader argument. Sorry about that's a bit blurry. So the main purpose of your introduction is to set the scene for your essay, give an overview of your main ideas, define key terms, and clearly state your position. So what does that look like? Some orientation to the key issue you're focusing on, some general statements about the background of the topic, and then your thesis statement needs to be there. This essay will discuss X, Y, and Z. Outline the main points to be discussed in the body of the essay. So signpost the essay for the reader and tie the thesis into your future as a teacher. The so what needs to be in there as well. So the body of your, as we've said, the body needs to have a series of sections that support and critique your thesis statement. Each paragraph, again, should follow that Peel model, and each of the sections should be logically sequenced. What does that look like? So each paragraph should focus on one main point. They'll generally be about 150 to 200 words long. They start with a topic sentence, and it's really important to remember that it's not good practice to have a quote as your first sentence. Your topic sentence is you stating your argument or your thought. Then you have the quote support you. The supporting sentences develop the main point and provide examples and use references to support your argument. The final sentence is that linking sentence. One thing you really do need to be careful of is not to make sweeping statements that cannot be defended. And then we get to the conclusion, where you draw all of the ideas together. You restate or summarise the main points, you paraphrase or restate the thesis statement, but it's important not to introduce any new information in the conclusion. That all needs to happen up in the body of your essay. Your reference list, there needs to be a full reference list on a separate page at the end of your paper. It needs to have APA 6 formatting, and there's a LibGuide link in the unit site if you're unsure of how that should be done. References are listed in alphabetical order. Second and subsequent lines are indented. Only use citations included in your text. Don't rely on websites and blogs. Many are not considered to be credible sources and will draw your marks down in that section. At least one citation is required for each paragraph to support your statements, unless it's you talking about a lived experience, but then we would expect another body paragraph in that section to have some supporting citations or to back up what you're saying. Try to paraphrase quotes and avoid putting large block quotes into your papers. This is your thesis and you're getting the citations to support what you're saying. It's not the other way around. Run your paper through the Turnitin originality check, but remember you still need to submit it through the assessment portal. I hope that's helped in some way. Please remember academic skills are there to help. This is the last week of classes for you, so you'll have no further access to your tutors. But you can get together and form a study group, and you can email me for assistance. If I think I've already covered the question in this presentation, I'll probably direct you back to the presentation. But please don't hesitate to contact Academic Skills about this task. All the best.